The stage of The View was set for a monumental encounter, a rare collision of Hollywood titans, Clint Eastwood and Robert De Niro. Both were invited to discuss their legacies, with Eastwood promoting his forthcoming memoir, a book as eagerly awaited as any of his films. The audience buzzed with anticipation, the bright studio lights casting a warm glow over the iconic round table. The hosts, Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, Sonny Hostin, Sarah Haynes, and Alyssa Farah Griffin, were poised to guide what promised to be a lively but civil conversation. Yet within minutes, the atmosphere shifted from excitement to tension as the two legends clashed over cinema, politics, and the soul of Hollywood itself. What began as a promotional appearance spiraled into a verbal showdown that would leave one man standing and the other walking off the stage. Eastwood entered the studio with his trademark stoicism, his gait slow and deliberate, as if stepping onto the set of a Western. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the room briefly before settling on the table. He offered no smile, only a slight nod to the hosts, his presence commanding silence. De Niro, already seated, was the opposite, gregarious, shaking hands with the hosts, his smile wide and disarming. He chatted lightly, exuding the charm of a man comfortable in the spotlight. The contrast was stark. Eastwood, the silent cowboy, versus De Niro, the expressive urban poet. The audience sensed the potential for sparks, but no one could have predicted the firestorm to come. Whoopi Goldberg opened the show with her characteristic warmth, her voice tinged with excitement. Ladies and gentlemen, today is a special day on The View. We have two giants of cinema, two living legends with very different perspectives. The crowd erupted in applause. First, the actor, director, and producer who made the silent cowboy immortal. Mr. Clint Eastwood cheers filled the room as Eastwood gave a curt nod. And of course, the man who needs no introduction, an icon of American cinema with countless unforgettable roles. Robert De Niro. De Niro waved, his grin broadening as the audience roared. Whoopi dove in, addressing Eastwood first. Clint, your memoir is a treasure trove for fans. What made you decide to write it now, at this point in your incredible career? Eastwood paused, his gaze steady, his voice low and raspy, like gravel underfoot. I figured if I had something worth saying, I'd better write it myself before someone else makes it up. The audience chuckled at his bluntness, but his words carried weight. I wanted to share what I've learned about honor, about standing tall when the world's against you. His tone was firm, almost defiant, earning nods from older audience members. Maggie, Eastwood's longtime assistant, watched from backstage, sensing the storm brewing beneath his calm exterior. De Niro, tapping the table lightly, jumped in. A memoir's great, Clint, but audiences today want modern stories, not just cowboys and guns. His smile was playful but laced with sarcasm, drawing giggles from younger crowd members. The air thickened. Joy Behar, ever quick to spot drama, leaned forward. Bob, you're known for speaking out on society. Clint, what do you think about artists weighing in on politics? The question was a lit fuse, and the studio held its breath. Eastwood tilted his head, his eyes narrowing. Talking's easy, but if it's just for attention, you're better off keeping quiet. His words, sharp and pointed, were aimed squarely at De Niro, who raised an eyebrow, unfazed. I speak out because I believe in it, Clint, De Niro shot back. Not like someone making films to glorify the past. The word past landed like a jab, and the audience gasped, some whistling in support of De Niro, others murmuring in defense of Eastwood. Sonny Hostin tried to steer the conversation. Both are legends. Let's talk about art, shall we? But the two men's gazes were locked, neither willing to yield. Backstage, Lisa, the veteran producer, whispered to an assistant, "They're digging their own graves." Tony, De Niro's manager, shook his head, knowing his boss wouldn't back down. Emma, a young reporter, scribbled furiously, sensing a career-defining story unfolding. Whoopi tried again. "Clint, in your memoir, what do you say about Hollywood today?" Eastwood's lips curled into a faint smile. "Hollywood now just chases money. They've forgotten storytelling is about touching the heart." De Niro laughed, cutting in. "Touching the heart? Clint, you think audiences still want squinting guys shooting each other?" The audience split, some cheering De Niro's wit, others clapping for Eastwood's resolve. Sarah Haynes, sensing the rising heat, posed a softer question. "Clint, your cowboy films defined an era. What makes those stories timeless?" Eastwood's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "My films are about people, fighters who don't bend. That truth outlasts time. No frills needed." The crowd roared, some standing to shout, "That's right, Clint." An elderly woman in the front row beamed with pride. De Niro, refusing to be outdone, countered sharply, "Truth? Your films are monochrome. Good versus evil. No depth. Audiences today want complexity, like Killers of the Flower Moon, where every perspective's dissected." Younger audience members clapped, a girl in the second row whispering, "Bob's right." Eastwood didn't flinch, his gaze steady as stone. "Complexity? You call it complexity, I call it clutter. Audiences don't need lectures. They need to feel a story's heart." He paused, his eyes sweeping the room. "A man protecting his family, his land. That's truth. No decoration needed." The audience erupted, applause drowning out boos from De Niro's supporters. A middle-aged man yelled, "That's Clint!" De Niro, feeling the shift, kept his smile but clenched his fist. "Clint, you talk hard, but times have changed. Your films belong in old theaters, simple to the point of naivety." He turned to the crowd, his voice persuasive. "Today we need stories that dig into psychology, social conflicts. That's real art." Sonny Hostin saw an opening. "Is Hollywood losing balance between art and entertainment?" De Niro took the bait. "Hollywood's evolving. Films like mine challenge audiences, force them to think. Cowboy movies are just dreams of a bygone era." Eastwood leaned forward, his voice low but piercing. "Dreams? You call what people bled to protect a dream? You're wrong, Bob. That's blood and sweat, something your films rarely touch." The crowd exploded, chants of "Clint, Clint," rising from one corner, while younger fans clapped for De Niro. Whoopi raised her hand. "Okay, both have points. What do audiences want from films today?" But the question was ignored. De Niro pressed on. "Audiences want truth, Clint. But the truth of this era, not fairy tales about lone heroes." Eastwood's smile was predatory. "What's your truth, Bob? A flashy performance for awards or a story that sticks forever?" "I choose the latter." The audience roared, a girl in the back shouting, "Take him down, Clint!" Backstage, Lisa held her breath, whispering, "They're tearing the show apart." Tony, sweating, gripped his phone, knowing De Niro was cornered. Joy Behar whispered to Anna Navarro, "This is gold for ratings." Anna, worried, shook her head. "If this doesn't stop, they'll burn the stage down." Alyssa Farah Griffin tried to pivot. Don't classic and modern films both have value? But the emotional storm swept her words away. The audience was divided. Older fans chanting for Eastwood, younger ones defending De Niro. Alyssa tried again, this time with a bolder question. Clint, you say films need heart. Bob, you emphasize complexity. Do your political stances, Clint supporting Trump, Bob opposing him, shape your storytelling? The studio fell silent, the question a lightning bolt. Eastwood sat upright, his voice like waves crashing against a cliff. My films tell stories of people who stand up, no matter the odds. I supported Trump because he dared to break the system, do what others only talk about. Applause erupted from older audience members, an elderly man raising his fist. Clint's right, De Niro, refusing to yield, fired back. Break the system? Clint, you backed a guy who divides, brags, and destroys. I oppose Trump because I believe in truth and unity, what Hollywood should convey. Younger fans cheered, a girl shouting, Bob, you're our voice. Eastwood stood, his eyes blazing. Unity? You cursed Trump on air for applause. But what have you done besides yelling? I back someone who acts, even if flawed, because that's the truth I believe in. Laughter mixed with boos as a man shouted, Take him down, Clint. De Niro's face flushed. I'm fighting to protect this country, Clint. What about you, backing a guy who just tweets trouble? The audience leaned toward Eastwood, chants of Clint rising. Whoopi, alarmed, intervened. Both have a right to their views. Let's keep it friendly. But the crowd ignored her. De Niro pressed on, his voice trembling. I've spoken at rallies, supported causes, pushed for change. That's action, Clint, not picking the wrong guy. Eastwood's eyes were like blades. Action? You read scripted speeches to clapping crowds. I back someone who faces the system, even if the world's against them. He turned to the audience. Politics isn't a popularity contest. It's about doing what's needed, not chasing praise. The crowd exploded, an elderly woman standing. Clint's right. We need real action. De Niro, faltering, tried a final blow. Do real things? Trump brought chaos. Clint, you call that action? I stand for American values, freedom, justice, that Trump trampled. Eastwood shook his head, his voice cold. American values? You talk freedom, but want everyone to think like you. I back someone who dares to act, imperfect or not. You just criticize, Bob, and Hollywood claps along. The audience roared, a young man shouting, Clint, you're unstoppable. De Niro's smile froze, his eyes betraying unease. Joy Behar, sensing more drama, interjected. Is politics dividing Hollywood? But Eastwood pressed on. I don't need Hollywood's approval. I say what I believe, and the audience knows it's real, just like my films. Sonny Hostin tried to salvage things. Politics divides, but you both want what's best, right? De Niro, eyes darkening, tried again. Clint, don't you see how Trump damaged the country? Eastwood's gaze was unyielding. I see a man who dares to act, even with the world against him. You only see what you want, Bob. The crowd went wild. A girl live streaming, whispering, Clint just delivered a knockout. Anna Navarro, sensing the tension, posed a new question. Clint, you said Hollywood chases the crowd, not truth. Bob, you believe it promotes unity. What role should Hollywood play today? Eastwood's voice was like a crashing wave. Hollywood used to stir the soul, inspire courage. Now it's a machine grinding out money and fame. The crowd blazed, an older woman shouting, That's the truth. De Niro fired back. A machine. Hollywood's a cultural flame, breaking prejudices. My Tribeca brings art to people, not just tickets. A group of young fans clapped, a guy shouting, "Bob, you're making history." Eastwood's eyes locked on De Niro. Culture? You call soulless, effect-laden films culture? Hollywood sells empty dreams, not art. People need stories of courage, not performances for show. The audience erupted, an elderly man standing. "You're right, Hollywood's lost itself." De Niro, trembling, countered. "Clint, you're wrong. Hollywood reflects society, equality, climate change. My films, like The Deer Hunter, changed how people see war." Some nodded, but his strength waned. Sonny Hostin tried again. "Does Hollywood shape society or just tell stories?" Eastwood's voice was a hammer. "Shape society? It chases trends, pandering to the crowd. I tell the truth, not preach." He stared at De Niro. "You call Tribeca art? I call it a stage to pat yourself on the back." De Niro's face flushed. "Pat myself? I built Tribeca for young artists, to bring stories to the world. What about you, Clint? Just films about loners, irrelevant to anyone but you." Eastwood shook his head, his voice like a cold wind. "Loners? I tell stories of people who stand up. You tell stories to get praised, Bob, not to change anything." The crowd went wild, a man shouting, "Clint, you're the king!" Whoopi, desperate, raised her hand. "Okay, both love Hollywood, but what does society need from films?" De Niro tried again. "Society needs films that challenge, Clint. Your films make people dream of a world that's gone." Eastwood's smile was victorious. "Dream? I make people remember courage and honor still matter. Hollywood doesn't need to change the world. It needs to remind us what's worth keeping." The audience leapt to their feet, applause like thunder. De Niro, gripping the table, showed unease. Eastwood continued, his eyes unyielding. "Hollywood sold its soul, Bob. You're part of that machine, whether you call it art or not." The crowd roared, a young man shouting, "Take him down, Clint." Lisa, backstage, whispered, "We're losing control." Tony, De Niro's manager, bit his nails, knowing his boss was cornered. Anna Navarro muttered, "They'll wreck the show." Joy Behar, eyes shining, replied, "This is legendary TV." Sonny Hostin made a final attempt. "Clint, Bob, you're both legends. How do you want your legacy remembered?" Eastwood's voice was like a barren plain. "Legacy isn't awards or money. It's what you leave behind. Stories that make people stronger, truer. I make films to remind people of courage." The crowd erupted, an older woman shouting, "Clint, you're an inspiration." De Niro fired back, "Legacy? Clint, you're leaving outdated stories. I built Tribeca, made The Godfather Part 2, supported artists. That's legacy, changing how people see the world." Some clapped, but the applause faded. Eastwood's eyes were cold. "Change the world? You built a theater to flaunt your name, Bob, not to tell stories. My legacy is films that live in people's hearts. Unforgiven, Million Dollar Baby. Yours? Raging Bull to cheap comedies. Is that your mark?" The words cut deep, and the audience exploded. De Niro tried to counter. "Cheap? I dared to challenge myself, Clint, from tragedy to comedy. What about you? Every role's a carbon copy." But his voice trembled, and boos rose. Eastwood's voice was an undercurrent. "Challenge? You chase trends. I make films so people remember truth never goes out of style." The crowd leapt to their feet, chanting, "Clint! Clint!" Whoopi tried to intervene. "Both have incredible marks." But her words were lost. De Niro, eyes darkening, tried one last time. "I've dedicated my life, Clint, From mean streets to Tribeca, I changed Hollywood. Eastwood's gaze was a verdict. Dedicated? You dedicated to you? Yourself, Bob. I dedicated to the people who watch my films, so they find strength in the darkness. That's legacy, not fame. De Niro cornered, stood. I don't need to sit here and take this, he said, his voice flat, and walked off the stage. Tony ran after him, but De Niro shook his head, disappearing behind the curtains. The audience went wild, some chanting Clint, while others muttered, Bob didn't deserve that. Eastwood sat unmoving, his gaze unwavering, like a warrior after battle. Whoopi, flustered, tried to close. Thank you, Clint, for your insights. But the theme music was drowned out by cheers. Lisa, backstage, clutched her head, whispering, the show's done for. Emma, the reporter, scribbled, knowing she'd witnessed history. Joy Behar whispered to Anna, this is peak TV. Anna replied, peak? This is a disaster. The camera zoomed in on Eastwood, commanding, in De Niro's empty chair, a symbol of defeat. Lisa signaled to cut the feed, but the audience kept cheering. Eastwood said nothing more, as if all was settled. Backstage, Tony tried to reach De Niro, who'd left the building, leaving an unfillable void. Emma, closing her notebook, whispered, this wasn't a debate. This is history. The aftermath was chaotic. Lisa, disheveled, shouted, why didn't anyone cut the feed? Tony, pale, got only voicemail from De Niro. In the control room, technicians argued to air the whole thing for ratings. But Lisa snapped, you want to ruin the show's reputation? The hosts were divided. Joy called it the best episode ever, while Anna called it a disaster. Eastwood left the studio, his pace slow, telling Lisa, I came to speak the truth. I've said enough. De Niro in his car stared out, shaken, questioning his legacy. Social media erupted, clips trending globally with millions of views. Posts praised Eastwood's authenticity or defended De Niro's innovation. Emma's article, Eastwood versus De Niro, the battle that defined Hollywood, went viral, sparking debate. Some demanded an apology for De Niro, others called for Eastwood's return. Lisa faced a flood of emails muttering, we survived, but at what cost? De Niro, in his apartment, refused interviews, grappling with self-doubt. Eastwood, back on his film set, shrugged off the frenzy, saying, I said what needed saying. The clash became a cultural milestone, reigniting debates about tradition versus innovation, authenticity versus glamour. Veteran director Walter Green called Eastwood the last remnant of an era where integrity mattered more than fame. A film school dedicated a class to the incident, students debating legacy and truth. Eastwood's words in a post-event interview summed it up. Tradition isn't outdated. It's a compass. When you forget why you started, everything becomes soulless. The story of Eastwood and De Niro on The View wasn't just a clash of legends. It mirrored America's polarization, where traditional values collide with modern trends. Eastwood, with his unyielding authenticity, embodied steadfastness, proving that truth endures. De Niro, caught defending his image, faltered. The lesson was clear. In a world of social media storms, authenticity is a lasting strength. Stand firm in your values. Let your legacy stir the soul, not chase fleeting fame. The View bore a permanent scar, but Eastwood etched an indelible mark, reminding Hollywood and the world what truly matters.